So let's start with this webinar. Welcome everyone to this webinar on bioinputs for sustainable agricultural production. My name is Jorge Celari. I'm a senior researcher at the University of Bonn at the Center for Development Research and leader of the Junior Research Group Transformation and Sustainability Governance of South American Bioeconomies, or SABIO. This webinar is organized by the Center for Development Research and co-organized by the Agro-Political Dialogue Brazil, Germany. So today in the agenda, we'll have 4 speakers. Each of them will give a short presentation. And after that, we'll have some space for a debate between the speakers. And after this debate, we will open up for questions from the audience. If you would like, you can already send in your questions via the Q&A function here in Zoom. And when we go to the Q&A part, we're going to read out loud the questions. And in case we still have some doubts about the question, we'll kindly ask you then to unblock your mic to clarify any doubts. This event is being simultaneously translated into Portuguese, English, or Spanish. You can use the interpretation function of Zoom on the bottom parts of your screen and choose your preferred language. And this event is being recorded and will be uploaded to our social media platform. Now, to start, I would like to invite to give the opening words, Dr. Tilman Schachtzig. Dr. Schachtzig has a PhD in agricultural sciences from the University of Bonn and currently works at the German Federal Ministry of Foods and Agriculture, the BML. In 2016, he joined the Division of Bioeconomy and Industrial Use of Biomass at the Ministry, where he works on the implementation of the German National Policy Strategy on Bioeconomy. So Tilman, welcome very much. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jorge. Well, yeah, my name is Tilman Schachtzig. I indeed work for the German Agricultural Ministry. I've been working in the bioeconomy division for several years already, and I'm now the international coordinator for bioeconomy. And in that framework, actually, we are, as Agricultural Ministry, on the one hand, supporting this project here, actually both projects, the SABIO project and the Agri-Political Dialogue, who is one of the co-leads here. And well, what's the reason for that? We do have, in Germany, we do have a national bioeconomy strategy. We are recognized as something like the pioneers of the bioeconomy in the world, since we were one of the earliest bioeconomy strategies. Nevertheless, implementing a bioeconomy is nothing you can actually do on a national scale. You need international cooperation. You need strong international partners. Therefore, the international cooperation for us in the bio is a strong component of our national bioeconomy strategy. We do have strong cooperations with South America. We're actively cooperating with the governments of Brazil, of Uruguay, and of Argentina. And I'm quite happy to see representatives of all these 3 countries here. We do have good relations with ICA. So very good to see you here, Hugo. And I'm very happy to be able to welcome you all here. The topic is of strong interest for South America, for the region, but for the whole bioeconomy. When it comes to the bioeconomy, what we want to have actually is an internationally working, sustainable bioeconomy. And that starts quite in the beginning, that starts in production. This is where we need sustainable bio inputs. And therefore, I'm really happy and thankful for this webinar today. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your experiences and ideas about the topic. And will not steal you any more of time and just wish you all the best and give the floor back to Jorge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tilman. Now to start with our panelists, I want to first invite here to the floor Hugo Chavarria. Hugo is the manager of the program for bioeconomy and productive development of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA. He leads the formulation, negotiation, and implementation of the Institute's project for the promotion of the bioeconomy in the Americas. He has a master's degree in international trade and a bachelor's degree in economics, and he currently manages more than 20 projects in the areas of biorefineries, biotechnology for agriculture, biofuels, and bioenterprises. Hugo, it's very nice to have you here with us. The floor is yours.
Gracias, Jorge. Muchísimas gracias por la invitación. Es realmente un gusto ver acá tantos colegas, tantos amigos.
Thank you, Georgie. It's a pleasure to be here, see you all, and have our presentation. I brought you a short presentation. So what's the situation of the bioeconomy in Latin America? And tell you about the developments. We will see the general context, the scenery of the bio input so that we can understand a focused discussion. As mentioned, I would like to stress three essential messages. First one, why is Latin America so important? Why should this be a development model? Why should this be a strategy for the whole region? Here is the first message for our region. Bioeconomy is not just a need, but also an opportunity. The need, because we have had a development model for 13, 14 years that's catching up, that's growing fast. So we have now new levels of hunger, of sustainability, resilient climate. So we also have socio-economical challenges in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we have a long agenda, and we can handle this through bioeconomy. So it's an opportunity, because when we speak about bioeconomy, this is the new frontier of science, of knowledge, of technology. So we can use what nature can offer us biologically, chemically, physically, so we can produce goods and services. Latin America and the Caribbean are the second regions for biological resources. If a bioeconomy would be a football club, it should be played here in this region. So we have a fourth part, which is also important. We have a huge reservoir and water, so we should use and benefit from the bioeconomy. It should be our strategy. Second point. Now let's have a look at the policies in the region, the policies for bioeconomy. We have two scenarios. On one hand side, just 3 countries of the region have a proper strategy dedicated to bioeconomy. Brazil, Costa Rica, and Colombia. So these 3 countries have national policies, but we have a number of countries that are in the way of doing it. They have proposals, ideas, programs, and others have sectoral strategies, for example, for livestock or environment. 5 years ago, we didn't have this. Now we have a renewal of public policies focusing on bioeconomy. despite the fact that we have many countries with no strategy or national policies, they are working on their regulatory framework for energy, biotechnology, biosecurity, and now also the bio inputs. So it's a huge challenge, and but we saw in the last 5 years that the countries are positioning themselves, and we should stress this. So the third message, the business and the technological development runs ahead of politics. So Latin America was the precursor in many fields of bioeconomy in the 50s, 60s, 70s, first Argentina and then Brazil. So these two countries were the pioneers, also biorefineries and others. So Latin America, considering technological development in many cases, was the leader in these areas. We also have the biotechnological applications. I won't dig deep into this, but since the 90s, we had developments in the region. So these are precursor countries, also considering biofuels, and the Latin American countries were those with the highest growth rates in the sector of biomass. For example, the region exports biomass. Here we have a huge potential. Now looking at the residues, we have many refineries using the residues, producing other products. In Rosario, in Buenos Aires, we had examples of this. So this is viable, it's possible. We have many examples in Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay, Argentina, and many other countries. Of course, these are isolated examples. We have to multiply them, but things are happening. And today we want to talk about bio inputs. So since the half of the 2010, we have seen new policies, demand-driven integrated solution, the search for a balance between development and environment. And lately, this has become more important. If we think of Brazil, between 2000 to 2020, the agents of biological control, microbial biocontrol, had an increase of 60%, and now it's up to 80%. So the growth is fast, considering biotechnology and also the regulatory framework. There's a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise considering bio inputs that are not yet classified. So we have the situation of lacking in investment and usage of all the biological inputs. And many countries use the same criteria as if you use chemical products. And of course, we don't have enough accredited labs. So these are limiting factors, limiting the incredible development and growth that could come about. So this is part of the discussion. So now I would like to share a short video that our colleague sent us. It's a colleague from Ica, Costa Rica.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the invitation. And it's a great honor for me to share with you all these reflections and our thoughts. And I hope everything is going well with your seminar. I would like to share with you a presentation, that I want to leave to you food for thought. There are some messages I would like to highlight. So we have a lot of crises and effects here. So first of all, we had a pandemic caused the biggest crisis in Latin America. Then we have extreme climate events that are having an effect on the crops worldwide, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So here we have some difficulties for the import for commodities. So this has to do with the response of the countries on the crisis. We see a scenario where international prices for food are increasing, and at this moment we can see a crude increase of 53% after the pandemic, after a decrease of 8.6%. So this scenario with an increase of the international prices is one of the biggest developments we could see in the many countries have more than 60% increase, and this reflects on poverty and hunger in Latin America with 32%. We have 32% poverty and 200 million people in this situation, more than 60 million people suffering from hunger. And of course, this all is based on the increase of the prices worldwide, especially agricultural products and cereals. We have more than 40% accrued price increase, and we must consider the price scenario for rice, for example, because we have a high stock compared to the last 20 years. So the rice prices could be 16% lower. This is a very good news considering global crisis and the increase of the price of the commodities. And of course, we also have a threefold increase of fertilizers. So here we could see this in January this year, but we still have prices 15% above the average. So here we can see a considerable demand in the last years, especially in the countries of European Union, Brazil and China, and some oscillation, and this caused the price increase internationally. And together with this, on exportation, we also have a demand concentrated on the countries like Russia, Morocco, USA, with 53% of the export quota worldwide. And so this started with the crisis and the war so here in Brazil, we have 5% of the importations from Russia and Nicaragua, Honduras, Ecuador. So all these countries depend on more than 60% of imports from these countries. And one factor is that the effect of this crisis will be very different for each country. So considering the demand per hectare and fertilizer, some countries need more than 300 kilograms per hectare, some countries more than 200. So according to international norms, and we have observed this in other regions. So here we have a very high consumptions, and we should think about a better efficiency and the better use of fertilizers, as we are going to discuss in this seminar, because one of the consequences is the commerce with data we have since January. In some countries, we have more than increase of imports for more than 100%, and at the same time, a reduce of exportation of 20%. So this can reduce consumption depending on the efficiency. So this would be an alert. As I said before, it is very important to see at the policies of the countries, and therefore I would like to invite you to visit the Observatory of Public Policy. So here we have all the policies for Latin America, but also globally, because these are policies that have some effect on the region. Some measures were taken, and I would like to highlight the most important. 40% of the measures are being implemented, and we can feel this on the commerce. So, and 17% of the merchandise is subject to this new regulation. So we are expecting more price increase, and many countries have they also will also give a fertilizer, and this can, as I would like to highlight that we have many political recommendations, but on the long run, of course, we should increase incentives for more technologies, new technologies and best practices, and technologies that are already available, but were not accepted. Now we see that they have a high potential to reduce the consumption of fertilizers and to look for alternative for other products. So my final message would be lessons learned. We should diversify, because a high concentration on consumption, on production, and high concentration in the use of inputs, this can make us vulnerable to crisis. So I'm sorry I talked a bit longer, but I would like to wish you good luck in this seminar. And thank you. And of course, we're always open to talk about this.
Presentation. As you all can see, the topic of bioeconomy is not only relevant for Europe, but it's also a hot topic in South America, in Latin America, and especially in this current international context, I think the topic of bioinputs has been more relevant than ever. Next, I would like to call to the floor Gustavo Gonzalez Anta. Gustavo is an agricultural engineer, graduated from the National University of Buenos Aires. He's a researcher and consultant in microbiology projects and professor of microbiology at the Universidad del Noroeste de la Provincia de Buenos Aires. He's also an active member of the International Biocontrol Manufacturers Association and scientific director of Indrasa, a biotechnology research company. Gustavo, thanks very much for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Josh. Primero, muchas gracias por la invitación a poder participar de este seminario. Y la idea.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. So I would like to share some ideas with you today based on the proposal for a more sustainable agriculture? How can we trade also the bio inputs? So in the three talks today, I think we're going to get the answers to these questions. First is in the 21st century, we advanced in the production of bio inputs in all the region in Latin America. All these countries use a lot of biological tools to improve the development and the growth of the crops. Second is a perspective, what we could do. And this allows us to develop our basis. And as a proposal, and as a very important proposal of the communications, is the realization of this event. I would like to talk about important topics that can accelerate this process. And the public-private partnerships will play an important role in this. Here we can create a new paradigm where we can use more biological resources. And we know we're going to live with this agrochemical products still for some time, and we are going to look for more productivity. We all know that we have, for example, the corn as an important crop in this region. We have nitrogen fixation, and we can use a lot of technologies. And with this, we have less impact, and we can use this as a tool in our products to increase the potential of our soil. So here we have we can have 70% functionality, PGPR, including a lot of bacilli. And we have an increasing demand of microorganisms to improve our crops. And in the last 5 years, especially here in Brazil and also in Argentina, we used many technologies and many biotechnologies developments with biofungicides. This, some years ago, seemed like a utopia, but today we have a good perspectives in these regions. We see also that it is very important to say that we have adopted oil seeds, microorganisms as biocontrollers. So this is a constant challenge, and we need to tackle this in the academy and also in the industry. And we need to try to get all this biodiversity to capture microorganisms and diversify these microorganisms and do the classification. We need to detect microbiologic tools to be used and to substitute the chemical products. We know that bioinputs can be essential for the substitution.
So we increased the number of formulations and we improved many aspects, and a key issue to keep on growing is to use the bio inputs in different treatments. And we know that this is linked to the resistance of some fungicides. Here we have resistances, and the use of biological tools can mitigate these resistances. So if we change and adapt the formulations, we can improve the formulations, use the microbiological tools so they have a good economic impact and we can manage our fields. Second element, which is becoming increasingly important. We have climate change, and we have to consider this. We might disagree how big the change, the climate change will be, but the stress, the abiotic stress and the resistance to it is fundamental, is key. We have to manage it, and we have several microbiological platforms to deal with the climate change. We can use the symbiosis, the entire potential. On the other hand, this is something still to be improved, to be developed, the concept of bio inputs, not just for the organisms, but to use the cells to reproduce them. And this will have an impact on productivity. And I brought you an example. This has been developed in different labs. We have a lot of input here, oligophenols and others, and they can provide and give us new tools as metabolites, and this will allow us to improve the substitution of several agrochemicals. Now let's see the future and being proactive. This kind of technology, and there's still discussion about the level of adoption and development, but in the case of pesticide, we also have biopesticides substituting traditional ones, and the usage is growing. Now, to consolidate the scenery and tackle the challenges so that we have more tools, better tools to understand the growth and development of the crops. And we have several research institutions, cooperation agencies, and this is key. So the cooperation is developing and growing, but we still have some issues, some problems. The communication is a problem, and communication is fundamental. It might not seem so important. It might seem minor when we talk about biology, but the language we speak in academia is different from the language in the industry. So we have to think about this language, about the interaction, also the format, the institutional format, the academic format, and the approach is different. So we have to see all the sides, all the players. We have to consider the limitations, the restrictions you have in the academia, when we talk about publications, or when we think of industry and a market, things researched by science. So we have to try to understand all the rules and move ahead. If we achieve this, we will be more dynamic and do more together. Last but not least, this is a huge opportunity, an important opportunity. The current paradigm has different meaning comparing chemical or biological. When we look, there is a paradigm change in the European Union, around the world, in the EPA. So environment is becoming more important, safe usage of resources, circular economy. So we have a new terminology, new tools, and as mentioned by Hugo Chavaria, to develop all the microbial tools in a favorable manner and integrate them in our production systems, we have to move on. We have to move ahead. So we are in a new era, in a new time. We have microbial tools, we have instruments. So right now, we will have to have two strategies, the chemicals, the agrochemicals, but also growing the usage of biological agents to handle pests and diseases. And we think about fungicides and pesticides. And we achieve a comparable result or even superior using biological control, biological agents. So there are new alternatives to improve the environmental impact. And to end, I would like to remind you of Serge Wingogradsky. When we think about the importance of agriculture for food and the war between Russia and Ukraine, the message from Serge is relevant. He guides us in the right way. He points us the way. We should use the biological instruments, the microbial tools, because the future of agriculture is possible if we base ourselves on microbiology. Thank you.
As we can see, the market of bioinputs is growing, and I think there's a lot of potential there for us to transition towards a more sustainable and bio-based agricultural production. Well, next, I would like to call Eduardo Abreu. Eduardo is an agronomist with a PhD in biological sciences from the Universidad de la República de Uruguay. He is a principal researcher at the bioinput unit in INEA in Uruguay, and his main research interests are phytopathology, microbial control of insect pests and diseases, production of microbial control agents, and microorganisms for plant growth promotion. Eduardo, thank you very much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Hola, buenos días para todos. A ver si puedo compartir pantalla bien, les pido que me confirmen.
Let's see if I can share my screen.
We actually see just half of your screen for some reason. Now it's complete, yes. Now we see the whole screen, yes.
We can just see half of it. Now. Good morning. Thank you, Jorge, for the invitation. I will talk in the name of the INEA from Uruguay, our entire group. I'm especially representing Elena Beihaupt. Unfortunately, she is not able to attend. What we prepared is an example what research can do, can achieve, considering everything all the previous speakers mentioned, all the development of inputs, bio-inputs, and what INA, a research institution, can do. We are right between the academia and the industrial application, or what farmers use in the field. So we are a research group. We want to bring the new developments, the discoveries to the field, to the industry. And we want to make it public. So this is a real development, because this is the definition of bio-inputs. It's not just a strain, it's we have the formulations and the application is consistent. So the bio-inputs should considered in a long-term strategy. We will see some examples in this presentation. The concept is One Health, because for us, the microorganisms and the plant are central part of the concept of One Health. So this is related to animal welfare, human welfare. Plants, microorganisms are sort of hidden. You can't see them. But in this scenery, it is key for us, the role of the microorganisms in the plant for their defense against pathogens. This is how we work on our projects. We have several research projects. We will show you some examples about the rhizobial inoculants and what this brought to Uruguay. We also have a project for co-innovation with the industry. So the inoculant improved the phosphorus intake using the phosphor in the soil, but is not normally used by the plants. So when we talk about the role of microorganisms, we should understand that in our case, and this is the focus of our study, because soil and plant interact, and we want to be facilitator of this interchange, so that the plant health improves, the general state of the plant is good and is resistant against pests and disease. And there is another functionality. We want to help the plant to get better nutrition. So we have to understand that soil health is important because it is there in the soil. This is midterm and long-term. There we have the plant health. If we have healthier plants with less chemical inputs in our fields, we will have a healthier environment, and we will contribute to the concept of One Health. This is the map of our different projects. Here I would like to identify some aspects. On one hand side, what I'm showing to you, and I will give you the details, the funding, the key aspects of the projects, because these are priorities to develop agriculture in Uruguay. But we also have partners. So it's ecology, it's formulation, it's selection, it's the use of microorganisms in agriculture. This is the central project. So it's real in the center, and it represents what the previous speaker mentioned. So all the disease, we can protect the plant if we use this and do it properly, if we have the right formulation, so everything well studied, well applied, will be efficient on the field. And from this central project, we have other development areas, other research projects. You can see here, for example, the biological nitrogen fixation. This is used in leguminous plants, in soya, on the fields. And we also have services, and I would like to stress this. We render services to the agricultural ministry. We check and control the quality of the biological inoculants. So if we leave aside the question of nitrogen, and we could also talk about Embrapa in Brazil, because we have several parallel projects.
And from funds that has to do with other topics, also the biology of nitrogen, but also the functions we can see and what we expect from microorganisms of the plants. So we have projects for the development of trichoderma, and we can do the formulation, the spray drying of trichoderma. So then we will have a dry product, and this can be used very easily. Then we have an improving project for the strains and the use of endophytes to improve the eucalyptus plants, the rooting. So we have here a whole portfolio of projects with microorganisms in the center, all the problems that need to be solved. And we have also a lot of very important partners. So therefore, I would like to highlight the fact that we have this project in the heart for all the work we cannot put in other products. So perhaps some of our partners, as the Institute Pater, they possibly are not so focused in inputs, but we can complement them. We are a group that does the research, and with our networks, we can improve the resources with people and also technological resources. So historically, we have an example for national policy that is being implemented since 1960. That is the system of inoculation of oilseed with rhizobiomes. This means that we can use less urea, and these are $1 million we are saving. And this is possible because the industry that produces the inoculants accept to use them, and the government has a certification system for all these products. As I said before, we have this in the lab of inputs, and here we have the quality control. This is a bioeconomical map. This is biological agriculture with a lot of historical development. Everything we built based on this technology. Important is also to highlight the economy, as I said before, because here we are talking about environmental economy. We are reducing the input of chemical products. And this is an example we would like to use also in other areas. So the handling of phosphorus in the crops. Here we still have a long way to go, and we still use fertilizers. So usually we use a lot of fertilizer, and the phosphorus gets into the groundwater. And we work also on the biological control of pests and diseases with all these microbiome groups. So we produce and do a formulation. We use formulations that are good for our microorganisms. So then our farmers can relate with these products and adopt them. So here we have a formulation, we have the seed coating, the production of fungus by solid or liquid fermentation. So we have all these different possibilities. We use different crops, what we can see here on the screen, and other crops we are expecting to develop in our work. I'm going to show you in 5 minutes the development of that's a co-innovation financed by ANI and private companies. We are looking for inoculants for soy plants to reduce the use of phosphorus. And our hypothesis was if we can have phosphorus not available for the plant, we can improve the efficiency of the fertilizer. So we can use less fertilizer with more results and less environmental impacts. So this was a long work we did with a lot of partners. We had a group of partners, national companies. We can see 3 here, 3 companies that produce inoculants, and we started this project from the scratch. We looked for a group of bacillus that would improve the formulations. So the companies that were on board with us since the beginning, now we have a lot of success. So as I said before, we started it from the scratch, and now we have an easy product. We're not going to show you step by step what we did. We have the strains, toxicity, the liquid production, formulation, genomic information. We have the growth and the liquid with the toxicity for mammals. And in the end, we had 3 strains that were formulated that were focused on the crops. And we had a lot of evaluations. This was the journey to show you what we did in this process. So since the culture collection, in vitro tests, and applying this on the field. So here we have the optimization of the fermentation for the spores. Here we wanted better characteristics for the strains, everything we could do in the lab and also on the field. And when we got on the field, so here you can see the best what we can show you today. We were able to repeat for 2 years with one product. So that's, we can consider this already a bio input with very low phosphorus. It's a supplement. And in some parts, we had a low phosphorus supplementation, and we had a soil with a low phosphorus content. We are going to leave this presentation with you. We're also publishing this soon. Here we can see what we harvested in soybean without phosphorus. Here we can see, but when we add the strains, we could see an increase. So phosphorus had no clear benefit for the plant, but needed really the mediation of this bacillus. So this bacillus could improve the use of phosphorus. We could prove this in the first and in the second year. In the second year, we have accumulation of this effect. So the same crops and the results were still improving. So Eduardo, you can you please close your presentation? Eduardo, we cannot hear you. Is your microphone on? Yes, I would like just to say that this is an example of co-innovation focused on bio inputs. And here we can see the challenges and the opportunities we faced during this. And we can talk about more about this in our question and answers.
Very exciting to learn about all of this portfolio of products that INEA is developing and all of the collaborations that you have with various actors and how it's important to build synergies, right, with these different actors. And also to learn a little bit that it's a long way from the development of this technology until we get to the point where the technology is actually ready for commercialization. Well, for our next speaker, I would like to invite Dr. Daniel Vargas. Daniel is coordinator of the Bioeconomy Observatory at the Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Brazil. He's professor of public policy and law at the Getúlio Vargas Economics and Law Schools and holds a doctoral and master's degree from Harvard University. He has served in different positions at the Brazilian government, such as Secretary of Sustainable Development and Executive Secretary at the Ministry of Strategic Affairs of the Presidency of the Republic. Daniel, thank you very much for being here with us today. The floor is yours.
Muito bom dia, muito boa tarde.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I would like, first of all, to thank the University of Bonn for the invitation. And I would like to greet all my colleagues and people from APD. I'm very happy to participate on this event with so qualified people. And in my short presentation, I would like to give you the scenario about the debate of bio inputs here in Brazil. And the point of this Brazilian discussion is a national plan of bio inputs. This was created after a decree of 2020, but this consolidates a reality that is already mature on the social reality and the scientific and economic reality. To present this plan, I'm going to organize my presentation in 3 parts. So I start with the challenges, with the context. I would like to highlight 3 important movements of experiments. Then I would like to talk about some central elements of this plan. And in the end, I would like to highlight some challenges we have, we need to understand how this discussion is going on in Brazil. So I start with the context. Our plan of bio-inputs in Brazil seem to be point to recognize a movement of experimentation in three important fields in Brazilian reality. The first is a social field and the production of organic food. In this context, Brazil organized the innovation and fostered the innovation in the last 20 years. So organic food is a production form to substitute chemical products with natural products. And on the basis of this organization, we see a lot of steps where we can organize ourselves. We have some best practices, technologies to foster this substitution. In 2016, Brazil wrote a plan of agroecology. And one of the goals, central goals, the goal 6, for example, was the creation of a program of bio-inputs.
So this is the first big incentive for what happened next, which is the national plan, which I will present you. So the next field of experimentation in science and agriculture is research. And here we have Embrapa, fundamental for research in Brazil. And in the last years, the agenda changed. This is the place where we have innovation, where you have progress. Over 600 researchers are doing research in the field of bio-inputs. Over 73 projects in over 40 units, so all over Brazil, and it's about over 10,000 strains for bacteria, fungi, and soon they will be available and will be there to produce bio-inputs, and this is all sustainable. So this scientific reality spearheaded by Embrapa, stimulating partnerships with companies. So we have a channel for the technological innovation so that this comes to market, comes to the farmer. So this is recognized, is welcome. And among the products that the agenda produced, we could stress Pastomax. This is a partnership with Biotrop. This is nitrogen fixation in soil, and you might save over 50 billion. Another important product is called Bioeconomy. This product helps to the solubilization of phosphorus and increases the plant uptake. This innovation is one of the innovations where we get a lot of royalties for royalty. Embrapa has over 70 generating revenue, and Biomapos is responsible for 30%. We are entering into partnership with several countries, Paraguay, Bolivia, and so on, and will be broadly used in agriculture. So just these two examples show as how the top agenda helps the bio-input. So there is a huge movement of experimentation, and this is happening on the market in agriculture. This is a research done by CropLife, shows that the Brazilian farmer, around 90%, had already used some kind of biocontrol in soya production, and 20% indicated 20 had used it, 90% mentioned that they would use it again. So the expectations for the next years are that the bio input market for plant protection should achieve 25% of the Brazilian market up to 2025 and keep up growing. If we look at the production on the farms, for the preparations of these inputs, we also see that there is exponential growth. And we look at all the graphs of bio inputs or the entire research agenda. So what this set of experimentation of examples shows us in research, in science, or market. So we have huge production. So the agenda of bio inputs in Brazil is not a promise. It's something in the future. No, it's a reality. And we already have a scale effect and we are achieving results, and it's been adopted by Brazilian farmers. Why do I explain you and tell you all this? To present you and understand the national plan for bio inputs is not to create a new regulatory framework that's for something that's going to happen, but it's to recognize all the development that happened from inside out, from the bottom to the top, from the market, from the society, from the academia, to the world, and now create the conditions that help and stimulate the progress and the assimilation of all the innovations in the productive base of the country. So the program has 3 axes: animal production, plant production, and processing. And then we also have structuring access or central measures to stimulate the progress of bio inputs in the country. Now I'll just show you and stress 4 key elements, because everything would be too much. In the center, we created a strategic council for bio input. So this is the central hub of the network. What's the goal? Here we want to unite the several links of the chains. So we have a representative of technology, of science, of the farmers, of the several ministries, but also leaders from the companies, from society. So all the stakeholders to have a proper forum to discuss the topics, and we meet every 2 months, discuss and decide how the agenda should evolve. The second element, this is the credits. In Brazil, we have for some time the low carbon plan for agriculture. It was revised for up to 2030, and some of the measures that are in this plan is the approval of specific credit lines for low carbon agriculture. And one of the credit lines of this year's has 5 billion reais, and among the potential goals for the funding and use of these subsidies and the credit, because it's subsidized credits, it's the production of bio inputs and biofertilizers. So with this credit line, the Brazilian bank, starting with the BNDES, which is the Brazilian Development Bank, we can guide the resources that support the development, different measures. So it's to install new plants and also the dissemination of this kind of measures in Brazil. The third element, it's about communication. So we understood that we already have in Brazil several innovations. They are disseminated, they are known in the research institutions and the companies. So we need a centralized national catalog. This is an important tool to inform the market, to inform the producers what are bio inputs, what they are good for, have lists, and we also want to have a certification. So moving on, we will prepare best practices. This will be led by the Ministry of Agriculture. So we'll have best practices how to use the bio inputs on the farms. And we want to link this catalog and the best practices to technical support. So we will have a proper Brazilian network to bring this new knowledge to all the players. And last but not least, one of the central strategies of the bio input plan is to establish a observatory. It's been discussed that it might be at Embrapa, and here we will collect data, experiences, and inform all the players about the development of the agenda. I would like to underline that this progress we achieved in the plan has three innovative features. If we look at the tradition or how Brazil dealt with the inputs during the years. The first one I already mentioned. So this is not a new plan for something that does not or did not exist, but recognizes something that's already there. It's become a reality, and which is taking up speed. Second, this plan changes the regulatory paradigm for bioinputs. Bioinputs are handled as one branch of agrochemicals, and the laws, the norms, they establish a high risk, so they prohibit several products, chemical products, until the innocuity and not toxicity is established. So we have to have a different definition, so to show that this is good for the environment and stimulate the use of bioinputs up to the moment that specific risks is apparent and needs or calls for regulation. So it's a change in the regulatory framework. So not start out prohibiting, but the other way around. Third, it's a policy that is linked to the policy of economic growth and development. So we have a huge contrast between the cities and the field, between industry and farms. And we want to stimulate bio plants or new development policies so that the farms, the land, can get closer to startups, to development initiatives. And this has the potential to stimulate value addition and the social and economic development of the country. Why is this so important? And I'm coming to an end. But there are still some challenges, so that we have a proper structure for this to really be a success. And the challenges are at the heart of our discussion. In the Congress in Brazil, we have two projects to have proper laws and regulate this, the bio inputs, the production, the designation, the usage. And these projects, one is in the Senate, the other one is the House of Representatives. So it's a discussion, an important discussion, and in the next months, the decision should come. So I would like to stress the three topics. The first one is the creation and dissemination of bioplants, as we call them, the production, the on-farm production. So this is a movement in Brazil, and we have a well-established practice. So the farmers, the producer organize this on their farms. So they have micro farms, micro plants in their farms to produce bio inputs. So the producers say that this is agriculture. So they have been doing it in general, not just for bio inputs, but we also know that part of the bio inputs are associated to microorganisms that you have to handle with care, and there might be consequences. We might not have assessed this properly. This could be harmful for health and for the economy. So we have to think of everything. So both bills have two criteria, the same criteria. So we want to regulate the bio plants, the on-farm plants, so that the farmers can produce this on their property, but the products should not be used commercially, and the products should be classified as low-risk product or risk 1 according to the risks established by the Brazilian ministry. This bill, which is in the Senate, so this is well explained. We see here the articles, so Article 9. So we authorize the production of bio inputs for proper use for the own use on the farm. So at the end, we also have this recognition that the on-farm production is legal. This will increase the production of bio inputs for the use on farm, not the commercial use, but we need control. We need to regulate this process. So when we advance, so when the farmers produce bio inputs for their proper use, they have to register this at the federal ministry and have to identify a professional responsible for the production of bio inputs. So this is the debate we are having. And what are the sides in this discussion?
Please,
so could you please
could you come to an end, because we're short of time. Well, on the other hand, we have the worries that the production of bio inputs is a reality and is a potential for new products that are more sustainable in the Brazilian agriculture. On the other hand, we have the worries because these products need to be traceable to make sure that these advances have no undesired consequences. For example, illnesses or something that contaminate the image of Brazilian agriculture. So these were my important topics. This agenda is already a reality here in Brazil. It's a practice, and we have this huge question how the country will establish the rules so this field can make progress to generate economical benefits, social benefits, and environmental benefits for the whole country. Muito obrigada.
Not only the adoption of this kind of technologies by farmers, such as credit for low carbon agriculture and importance of technical assistance, but also all these different policies that are meant to regulate the production and commercialization of this technology, which I think are all topics that we can now discuss in a bit more detail during our panel. And for that, I would like to pass the word to my colleague, Maria Eugenia Silva Carrazone. Maru is a doctoral researcher here at the Center for Development Research at the University of Bonn, and she will be the one moderating the debate now. So Maru, the floor is yours.
Thank you, George, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're joining. I hope you can see me and hear well, as I'm joining from the cell phone for technical reasons. Well, we had the chance to learn and hear great presentations from different backgrounds, different contexts, and with different perspectives. So, and we've seen some very interesting hints from these presentations that we would like to dig into now in this panel debate. So the idea is to, well, share with you some questions and invite the panelists to spontaneously answer whenever they feel more comfortable. So one thing that has been calling our attention is that, well, bioinputs really sound like a promising technology for a sustainable agriculture. And as we saw, the market has been growing at a really fast pace. It's a very dynamic market. However, the levels of adoption of this technology, of these inputs, still seems low, especially if we compare it to the traditional inputs. So what would you say is the bottleneck for further adoption, and especially what would you say is the perception of the farmers of these technologies or inputs? Which type of farmers are adopting them, and how do they perceive them, and which challenges can be on the adoption side from the farmer's perspective? So I don't know who would like to take the floor and give some insights on this regard. Unfortunately, I cannot see you all. Now I can. Daniel.
Muito obrigado, Maria.
Thank you. I would like to comment on 3 topics. So first, every innovation only can be real and have impact when spread it out. And I can see that this bio inputs is spreading in a very high pace. So between organic the farmers, this is already part of their culture. So they are organic, and they are creating the inputs. We have a lot of groups of organic farmers, and this has advanced a lot. In the big agriculture, import, export, and commodities, the price was a high driver to spread best practices in the use of bio inputs. So we know that real economy, that these new innovations create an economy, and that's good news. But now, of course, your question is correct. We all still have a challenge, and we still have a challenge to spread out these technologies. And I think the most important bottleneck are the existing systems. And here we have 2 important challenges. First of all, and perhaps the most important, is the model of technical help. It was created for traditional inputs and not for the bio inputs. So the technicians that help the farmers today were trained in an obsolete model. So the schools of agronomy that form the farmers and technicians are adapting to the new technologies. So here we have a change of paradigm, and we're shifting to a biological paradigm. And this transition, this is happening, and we are building the technicians. We are training the trainers to help to spread out these best practices in the countries. So linked to that, I think we'll still have a huge challenge. We need to help these networks we have here in Brazil, and they should adopt this agenda as an opportunity, because this technical assistance, and here we have online systems, online learning systems, and with this we can increase the productivity on the fields. That's so I see we have a challenge, and we should help these programs of technical assistance, so then the results can be quicker. And I'm very optimistic. I think it is important to put this on the agenda and focus on it in the next years.
My apologies, I lost connection for some seconds. So I see Eduardo and then Gustavo and then Hugo, if that's correct.
Bien, yo desde el punto de vista de la producción, digamos, de un bioinsumo, de la investigación en la obtención
Well,
de...
the production of inputs and also the research. So this is key to adopt it. And also one of the most important challenges is the research. So one of the biggest challenges is the consistency of the results. As we work with organisms, here we have some interactions, and these interactions are subject to specific situations on climate. We depend on climate factors, we depend on the ecosystem, and these are huge challenges for the design. I think that's important. We need a design of bio-inputs that is consistent with different fields, with different climates and regions. So we really need to change the design, and we should not insist on our mistakes, because then we will lose confidence on lose trust on the product. We need to adapt the product to all the small and huge variations. And I think this is the biggest challenge for research. We need to think of the system as a whole. When we're developing a product, we need to think of it, and we need to have this in mind to be consistent. So this is an important question, and this is fundamental. So that's what I wanted to add to now. Yes, about what you said, Maria, about the acceptance of the farmers. Here we have three important topics in this development. So there is an opening. The farmers like to listen and to use these bio inputs in the last 20 years, and especially in the last 5 years, the acceptance from the farmers grew a lot, thinking on similar paradigms. I think that we have this acceptance, and we can see it when we communicate different technologies. So this is a point where the public informations about climate and climate change and all these problems. So the farmers are really open to use this bio inputs. And second point is that the use of biological inputs is different. We cannot expect a high velocity. So when we have a chemical product, the moments to apply are different, the time frames are different, and we have a whole training process. And it's important to see when and how and where these products are used to be efficient. And we need to substitute our old paradigm. And third, one very important point is that the producers in general, and me also, I'm also a producer, we expect things to be simple. And the industry made a lot of progress because they tried to make things easy. We have the equipment, the doses. So the industry helped that this could be very similar as a traditional paradigm. So all these elements, more opening for the alternatives. And second, try to train. So it's not the same. And we need to explain that it's not the same with different moments. And third of all, we need to make the process simple. And I think the simplicity is the highest complexity. So we really need to make things simple. And we believe that with this, we can increase the speed of the adoption.
So this is a huge challenge. Also, speaking at the end is difficult because we should speak fast and not be repetitive. So I would like to come back to the third point. There are three elements that are hindering the development, restricting development. Developments that could happen in Latin America and the Caribbean. Gustavo mentioned the first, and it's linked to knowledge and knowledge about the product and how to use it. When we have the data, sometimes we can't do it. And someone mentioned it because we didn't know how to transform the scientific data in an information that can be passed along to other players. And the producer is sort of contaminated with past experiences, products that were not based on science and technology and did not work well. So we have to convince people. Second, the offer of bio input. So what is offered is not so much in some countries. You have way more agrochemicals, so they are lacking behind. So sometimes registration of bio inputs to develop a brand, it's difficult. It takes time. The laws, the rules, they are not adjusted to biological products. And they followed the chemical, the rules for chemicals, and it's two different things. So all the communication channels with the producers are based on chemicals. And to change this and to make people understand what bio inputs really are is not so easy. So technicians, scientists are trying to explain this to producers. So all the technicians in dialogue, talking to the farmers, they have to be able to explain it well, to explain it technologically, but also practically.
To keep discussing. So, well, you mentioned the role of technical assistance, of extension, the need of create awareness in the farmers, improve maybe communication and changes in regulation. So the next thing probably that comes to our mind is, which would you say is the role of public policies, and which are the concrete measures or interventions from public policies that could be done to foster the adoption of this type of inputs? So again, I invite you to spontaneously reply.
Voy a comenzar yo, Silvia. que estoy...
Well, I might start. We need an interface between science and the producer. And I would come back to the last aspect I mentioned. We have to simplify things, make it less complicated. And as Eduardo mentioned, and Maria, public policies should be simple. You need clear objectives. So we're talking about something different, something new. Bio-inputs are different, so we need specific regulation, and 3, 4, 5 points should be considered. We should not be redundant when we talk about registration. We should convey clear ideas. So what's needed to register bioproducts, bio-inputs, and we should stress the benefits that you achieve when you use bio-inputs compared to other alternatives. So the key word is simplicity. Of course, you have to demand everything that's needed, but keep it simple. Today, in our systems, we have to decouple, we have to simplify the technology, we have to generate knowledge, and growth and geometric development. But everything should be easy, simple, so that the science can develop into practical technologies. And for this, we need clear public policies, clear rules and norms. We shouldn't establish too many requisites. Of course, we know Pareto law, so we should focus on what's really important and have a tracking system. So clear objectives define our goals, and we should be able to measure them, and we should have simplicity so that bio-inputs can come to markets real quick. Sometimes people don't understand biotechnology properly, correctly, because there is so much law and regulation.
Yes, happy to do it. Eu vejo esse campo dos
So the field of inputs should be seen as the next chapter for economy and agriculture. It's a new paradigm. It's a new paradigm, how to think, how to work, how to see development. And this paradigm also creates a new structure. We have a center and we have an advanced frontier. At the center, we have the farmer, the big ones, the medium-sized one that produce our food. And on the frontier, we have several innovations that might happen on the field, starting on small farms, small experiments, but they might also happen in cities, coming from startups, from industries, from bioplants, because they will stimulate the creation of new bioinputs, new practices. And the key is we have to coordinate this development, coordinate what's happening at the frontier with the basis and the cities so that we achieve process, that we have more discovery, more innovation, new practices, new input, that everything gets disseminated and is adopted, and we achieve scale effect and have a good result for society, the economy. And the key is the coordination to make the link with the frontier and the center and the basis. We need a system that can evolve and adapt. So looking at the reality in Brazil, in the Brazilian agriculture, the main feature is its ability to adapt, to evolve real quick. Agriculture in the 70s is different from agriculture in the 80s, and it's different from what we have today and what we have in the future. And this is a huge potential. And the question is, will we be able to organize this continuous change in development? Here we have three missions for the state, for the public policies. It's about concept. When we talk about bio-inputs at the generic concept, but here we have many different things. Some things are real simple, others are very sophisticated, but we also might have some risks. So we have to separate things. Bio-inputs that don't need a lot of regulation and which are more sensitive, have to be handled with care. And this is important to have security on the market, all the developments of the corporations. Second challenge, to coordinate the dynamics. So the new measures are one step in the right direction. So we have to establish a new system. And in a huge country and so diversified as Brazil, we have to work with the state. In Brazil, we have 27 states. So it's in reality the states that coordinate the policies and that are responsible. So without the state, the risk is huge. So what you decide on the top will not get down to the bottom. So you have to regulate bio-inputs in the states. 5 of the Brazilian states already did it, but it's their homework to do the coordination in the state so that all the elements get connected, so that the development is disseminated faster and reach everybody, so that we have capillarity. And the third aspect is credit. Things are changing. Historically, public credits are important. Second, we have private credit line, but the private credit line has to improve, has to increase, and the state has to help, has to stimulate it, but things are changing and things are happening.
Thank you, Daniel. Hugo, you requested.
Gracias, María. Sí, efectivamente, siguiendo con el...
Thank you, Maria. I would like to stress 3 functions or roles of public policy. It's to be a facilitator, facilitate the private market, not to create obstacles, always use science, be based on science, be clear and simple. But the main role is to be a facilitator, but also there is the role of control, of establishing norms, regulatory framework. So this is the fundamental role of the public policy. The second role, in my opinion, is to promote a basic condition to stimulate bioinputs. So questions of adaptability, knowledge transfer. There are functions in academia and science that can be supported by public policies, but here the state must be a protagonist. science needs this. So you need capacity building, you need funding. This was already mentioned, but there is a second sphere. You have to create the basic conditions. And third aspect is to promote the market, is to promote funding, investment. The state has a fundamental role. You need the proper conditions, you need the right ecosystem to attract investment so that companies can grow. And countries as Brazil, you have huge experience. You can use the state to stimulate things if you have proper public policies. We have other examples in Latin America. When you have new products, you could have state aid. But to wrap it up, having the three elements, so facilitate business environment, facilitate basic conditions, and regulate market and investments.
Thank you very much. Again, lots of topics that we could be discussing for hours, but we really would like to stick to the time we agreed. So if it's okay for you, we now will move to some questions and answers from our audience. I have to say we have a lot of questions, so thank you very much for being also active and providing so many good triggers for the conversation. So there is one question here that I think is somehow related to the consistency issue that Eduardo brought up, but again, it's an open question for whoever wants to take it. And this is a question that asks about how the performance indicators of different bioinputs can be adapted to different regions, considering that, for example, fertilizer applications are different in the north and the south, or that it changes with the role of more extreme weather conditions. Don't know if you consider the question is clear or we should ask for clarification to the person who raised it.
Si podés leer el comienzo otra vez de la pregunta.
Yes, of course. It says how the performance indicator.
Okay. Creo que perdimos a María.
Unfortunately, we cannot hear.
With Maria Eugenia. But did any of the panelists understand the question and could give it a try answering?
Sí, si me permite, Eduardo.
Yes, Eduardo. I would like to elaborate a bit on this. I would just talk about two topics. Clearly, I see that the environments are different in different places of the world and also in our countries. And today we are talking about different territories, because even in the same state, we have different environments, we have different soils, different handling, different productivities. So, of course, we need to focus our tools, our microbiological tools, for these different environments. And so we have a similar logic as we use in the traditional paradigm with fertilization and with the battle against diseases. So the production should be managed as a unit. But of course, that's not, today we have different maps for diseases, for precision farming. So we have environments, micro environments, meso environments where we can work. So we need to regulate the density, the doses of fertilizers, what the pesticides we need to have a better effect. And the same works for microbiological tools. So considering the question Maria Silva asked, as we are marching to a precision farming in the traditional paradigm, we are also seeing the possibility of having precision farming with microbiological tools because of the different realities of the crops we need to manage. That's perfect, Gustavo. I just would like to add the concept of consistency I mentioned is not opposed to what you said now, to recognize the impact of different environments. We should get to know them, and then we can advance with our technologies. And of course, considering the importance of all these topics, the product needs to be as consistent as possible. And looking at research, we should try this always considering the context, because of course it's not the same if we add a bio input on a soil with for example, we have soils with a lot of rain that depends on the rain, and we have soils that depend on the watering of the farmer. So it's very interesting to see that the experiences we're having will give the feedback. So we need to be prepared to develop this, because when we get all this information, we need to use them for our inputs when we apply bio inputs in our environments. And we need the feedback to the system to improve the consistency of our product. So we need to understand that some conditions, that some products may not be used under certain conditions or in certain environments.
Well, I will pick another question, but then, sorry, Daniel, you wanted to say something?
No.
Ah, sorry, so you were raising your hand. So I'm picking one question again from the audience, but we also invite our panelists to directly address or reply through the chat box other questions that you might find are interesting or that you can contribute. So, well, this one is a super easy question, and it says, which particular bio inputs would you say that are the most relevant or more promising right now? And what are the main challenges to produce them in a large scale?
Si quieres, María Silvia, empiezo yo. Sin lugar a dudas, el tema
I can start. Well, undoubtedly, the microorganisms that fix nitrogen are the biggest bio input used in agriculture. As the other speakers already mentioned, especially when we think about the tools, the radiorhizomes are the most important products and the most used. But on the other hand, important bio inputs that was much used in the last decades are the biocontrollers and bioinsects. So the control for the insects. So in the future, especially in Brazil and Paraguay, Bolivia, and the north of Argentina, we are using trichodermas because they're easy to use in solid and liquid basis. I think these are the most scalable products, and they can be easily used. This does not mean we don't have other tools, gram-positive bacteria or viruses or pathogens. We can use them all as a tool with biological control, and they are already being used, and the production is growing.
Thank you, Gustavo. Someone else would like to add something? So, well, I would like to thank our panelists. Yes, please, Daniel.
Desculpa interromper, antes do final. Eu só gostaria de destacar.
Well, before we end, I just would like to say that we have innovations, of course, and a huge variety of developments in Brazil. And I would like to highlight the role and the leadership of some people. One is Secretary Alessandro Cupinel, and he gave me a lot of inspiration and information for my presentation. He has a very interesting work, and he talks to scientists and leaders. And I just would like to say we should think about increasing our cooperation networks between the countries in South America. And so then we will be able to advance this agenda. And in our Fundação Getúlio Vargas, I'm, of course, always available, but we have a lot of colleagues at Embrapa that work with these topics.
I will give the word now to Hugo. I think you asked for the word, and I ask you please to be brief so we can stick to the time. And thank you.
Gracias, María. No, en la misma línea que Daniel.
Thank you, Maria. I would like to answer a question I saw here in the chat. Of course, this is implemented in the countries with the production, but of course, this is also an international topic, and here we should increase our links and contacts. So all the regulations in the European Union and the US will impact in our production. So everything can have positive or negative impact. We have a lot of room to work together as a region, to share experiences, best practices. We should build projects and to tackle the challenges that are very similar in the countries. This is very rich and has a lot of potential. We can work together on this.
Call to policymakers to facilitate the transition to adoption is also made. So with this, I would like to thank you all for your participation, and I will give now the floor again to Georgie for the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you everyone for participating. I think we discussed here several very important topics, not only about bioeconomy more broadly, but then more specifically about bioinputs. I think this is a topic that we will still be discussing for the foreseeable future. And there seems to be several policy instruments that we should be considering to really foster the adoption and facilitate the use of this kind of technologies by farmers. And it seems that especially regulation was a topic that several of you mentioned a few times. And also cooperation, right? Not only between different actors like academia and industry, but also cooperation between countries in our region, in Latin America. I think this will be key for us to advance this agenda. So now just to close, I would like to briefly pass the word to my colleague, Ingo Melchers. Ingo has over 25 years of experience in international projects, working on topics related to value chain cooperation, food security, agriculture, and environmental policies. He has worked for almost 20 years at the GIZ, and now he's the director of the Agro-Political Dialogue Brazil-Germany, who are our partners here in this event. So Ingo, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Jorge. So first of all, I would like to thank you all, Daniel Vargas from FGV, Gustavo Sales, Hugo Chavaria, and Eduardo Abreu. And this was a very interesting debate, and good news are that we were not able to answer all the questions we got. So we see here Alessandro Cruzinel from MAPA Ministry, and I would like to remember also the question from Ingo Plöger. He was talking about the potential of tropical agriculture. This is very different than what we know from other climates.
So wrapping it up, I don't have to repeat everything, but I would like to stress something else. Jorge mentioned cooperation and funding, not to give the idea that we from APD, the political dialogue, can assume any funding, but just to tell you that this week we will have another debate between Germany and Brazil, also on bioeconomy. This is in Rio de Janeiro, and this week, and we will have a debate, a discussion about possibilities, functions, and funding, and so on. Maybe one last thing about the APD, the Agro-Political Dialogue. It's an instrument from both governments, Brazil and German, and the partners are MAPA and the Brazilian ministry and the German counterpart, so they are here, and we will see each other again this week. And I would also like to thank our translators. Let's see if I have all the names. It's Martina and Susanna and Amilcar and Doris. I hope I got it right. I would like to thank our organizers, first of all, Jorge and Fernanda, for their hard work, but also Maria and Florence, and maybe also Pablo and all the others. And please forgive me if I didn't mention everybody. That's it. Well, and the fact that we couldn't answer all the questions, all the provoking elements. It's good news, because this means that we will have to continue our debate. So see you again the next time. Latin America is strong in this debate. For those here in the region, a good lunch, and for those in Europe, a good evening, and bye-bye. Thank you.
Just remembering that we will upload this webinar to our social media, so you can just see the presentations there if you want to get any additional information. And I'm looking very much forward to keep discussing with all of you about this topic, and I think there are still several aspects that we can and should be debating. So once again, thank you very much, and good afternoon and good evening to everyone. Hope to see you all soon.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Thank you
Thanks a
all.
lot. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.